Welcome to the Guilbault Girls Show, where you will have the opportunity to hear from mothers, fathers, siblings, and individuals themselves about their journey of living with a disability. I know, it's called Guilbault Girls, but we have a bonus for you as we get the Guilbault boys to interview some of the dads and siblings to get their perspectives too. We'll also have special guests from time to time to share the many resources that are available to those living with a disability and their families. So get ready to laugh, smile, cry, maybe even get a little angry when you hear some of those stories of their day-to-day struggles. But let's not forget their many triumphs. As they say, it takes a village, and if it weren't for our village, we wouldn't be where we are today. So join us. Hello, and welcome back to another episode of the Guilbault Girls. I'm your host, Karen Guilbault, and today's guests are Alexa and Jacqueline Child, founders of Dateability. Dateability is a dating app designed for people with disabilities and chronic illnesses. After becoming disabled due to chronic illnesses as a teenager, Jacqueline's life was forever changed. She was quickly exposed to the ableist behaviors and expectations perpetuated by society. She found dating challenging and would always fear disclosing her disability. She constantly wished that she could meet someone else who understood the life of chronic illness and disabilities. Since there wasn't an app to do that, Jacqueline and Alexa decided they would make one. So thank you guys both so much for being on the show today. Before we dive in, I just want to share a little background about each of you. So Jacqueline graduated from Colorado College in 2016 with a degree in psychology and received her master's degree in family and human development in 2017. She spends her free time playing music, volunteering at the local animal shelter, and hanging with family and her dog, Luna. Alexa graduated from College of the Holy Cross in 2012 and Georgetown University Law Center in 2015. After law school, she began her career in public service and is currently a public interest attorney. She enjoys all the typical Colorado things, hiking and skiing, but also loves to cook and binge watch TV. So thank you guys so much for being on. I really appreciate it.
Thank you for having us.
Thank you.
You are welcome. So Jacqueline, let's start with you. In your bio, you stated that you became disabled due to chronic illnesses as a teenager. Can you share with us what chronic illnesses you were diagnosed with, what they are, and how it affects your daily life?
Yeah, so I was first diagnosed with dysautonomia when I was 14, which is basically a dysfunction of your autonomic nervous system, which controls all of the involuntary components of your body. And then that diagnosis quickly spiraled into a lot of others, Ehlers-Danlos, gastroparesis, and then throughout the years have been diagnosed with other ones like trigeminal neuralgia, lupus, rheumatoid arthritis, a congenital heart defect. And so really, I'm affected from head to toe. I live with pretty severe chronic pain, a lot of chronic fatigue, just feeling very out of control of my body. And yeah, it's been a long journey, and I go through a lot of treatments. For example, I also have primary immunodeficiency, so I do an IVIG infusion every 3 weeks, and I've also had over 40 surgeries on all parts of my body to try to either fix things or relieve symptoms. And so it's been a struggle the past 15, 16 years, but I'm learning to adapt, which is just how I cope with everything.
Yeah, day by day, minute by minute. Now, so I'm familiar with dysautonomia because my daughter, she was diagnosed with that, which she said was the big umbrella. Yeah. And then she ended up getting diagnosed with POTS, the postural orthostatic tachycardia. Now, can you just explain, because I think that there's not enough awareness about any of these, to be honest. Can you just explain, so you just rattled off the list. Can you kind of go in a little bit deeper on what it is? Like, what is EDS? What is some of the others, just so we can kind of give some context to the listeners too, and bring about awareness to those things.
Yeah. EDS is a connective tissue disorder, and often people with EDS have hypermobile syndromes. They're very flexible, joints sublux and pop out. And then there's also vascular components to some people, which can just really affect just like the veins and the vascular system, can cause congenital heart defects, so on. And then in addition to the EDS affecting my connective tissue, I also have lupus and RA, which also are connective tissue disorders, which I've had my jaw joint replaced when I was 21, and just causes a lot of inflammation, and it really just disintegrates your joints and makes you go bone on bone, which can be really painful. And then gastroparesis is essentially a paralysis of your stomach. And for that, I had to get a J tube, which directly gives me nutrition to my intestine rather than going through my stomach, which is where the issue lies. And then trigeminal neuralgia is it's basically what I can describe it, what people describe it is like an ice pick, feels like an ice pick to your trigeminal nerve, which gives you feeling and sensation across like your cheek and your forehead, kind of like a letter 3 or a number 3. And that is often known as the suicide disease because unfortunately there aren't many treatments for it, and people end up just wanting to stop the pain.
My daughter's doctor, she has EDS, is Elders, how do you say it?
Ehlers-Danlos.
Yes. I know she has rings that rings with knuckle rings, and I know she had a neck brace, and she's trying to go through all different therapies and try to get help with all of that too. So I knew a little bit about that, about what it was. But again, I don't think that there's enough awareness to any of these, to be honest with you.
Definitely.
Yeah. So, Alexa, what was running through your mind when your sister was diagnosed, and how did the family dynamic change through all of this?
Yeah, I was in college, almost 3,000 miles away when she first got sick. And so I was pretty disconnected from everything. I didn't really see what was happening on a day-to-day basis. I would hear from my mom. My mom would call me pretty distraught, but I didn't really become familiar until more law school. And then when Jacqueline and I moved in together after she graduated college, she joined me in Denver. The family dynamic did change though. I, growing up, was a little bit of a wild child. And so I think my parents worried about how I would turn out. I ended up turning okay, if I do say so myself. And I think now, for a while, my parents actually were relieved that they didn't have to worry about me at all. And so it was like a switch. Like I was the problem child, the one that they were worrying about. And then Jacqueline didn't become the problem child because it was out of her control, but she kind of became the focus. And I was the one that they were like, okay, Alexa's going to be fine. We don't have to worry about her as much. I think it's really good for me, at least, that Jacqueline didn't become sick until I was older and already out of the house. I imagine for kids who are younger, it's probably really hard because the attention is really focused on the child that's sick. All the questions, my mom's friends would say like, how's Jacqueline? And I was kind of the one that was forgotten about because there was nothing interesting happening in my life. And so I think if I was younger, that would have been problematic, but
especially if you were already the problem child.
Yeah, it probably caused you to rebel even
more. Because it's tough because there's so many things and times as a mom where I look at my son JD, who's who also lives in Colorado. He's gonna be 25 in October, and I just think of some of the times because the focus was always on her. Thank God for my husband, because those two were buddies. But some people that if they don't have that good relationship, they can just you don't know where they're gonna go or what they're gonna do. I'm actually going to be interviewing a gentleman who runs a program for addiction, and he talks about, I guess, a lot of people with family members that have addiction. And there's so many aspects to it. And I always feel like it's a tough conversation because here you're sitting here and you don't want to hear that because you don't want to feel that burden, because even my daughter even says to me, and she's 20, she has cerebral palsy, POTS, and cortical vision impairment. And she'll ask me sometimes, she's like, Mom, she's like, am I a burden? Or, I'm like, no, I'm like, I wouldn't want it any other way. Of course, I don't want you to go through these things. But, even if I talk, because it is a tough conversation, because I love her dearly. I wouldn't change a thing. I would do it over and over and over again. It's just, we hate to see you guys have to go through this. It's just, that's how it is. But
Yeah.
okay. So then, all right. Did you want to go on
No, I was gonna say my parents did a really good job of once Jacqueline got a diagnosis, and we kind of figured out what was going on, because for the longest time we had no idea. My parents do a really good job of focusing on us individually and making sure that we both get love and attention, especially now that we live together. And so it's definitely, now that things have plateaued and like normalized, we're
and that
good.
I'm almost 30 years old.
Right, you're not
Right.
a kid anymore, so it has
Exactly.
changed since then. And so they do a really good job of making us both feel important and loved in our own way.
Now, where do they live?
They live 6 hours away in a small mountain town called Telluride.
Okay.
Yeah.
So, Jacqueline, I read in one of your blogs, Life with a Feeding Tube, that you had over 40 surgeries and that getting the J tube was the worst one of them all. What stood out to me the most was when you said, quote, I spent a week recovering in the hospital with 10 out of 10 pain, only to be released and still have the same pain for months while my body recovered from trauma. I feel that so many people, they don't understand how long that our bodies actually hold on to trauma. So can you share with us a little bit about the different surgeries that you've had over the years and what those experiences were like for you?
Yeah, I have really had surgeries from head to toe. I've had 2 brain surgeries. I had a thoracotomy to work on my congenital heart defect. I've just had surgeries like on all of my joints, and they've all taken long times to recover. And yeah, the J-tube one was really, really hard. And I think it was really hard emotionally and physically. It took me a really long time to actually go through with the surgery. It had been suggested to me for a while that I needed to get a J-tube. And then once I spoke to one of my providers, and they said, the risk of you getting esophageal cancer is pretty high because of all of the throwing up that you do due to the gastroparesis. And that really just changed something in me. And I was like, okay, I can do this. And so I went in not really knowing what to expect. And I ended up having like an open abdominal surgery and then spending a week in the hospital, and there was just nothing that could help my pain. And so it was really tough. And prior to that, like, I'm very good with recovery. I really don't make a big deal out of any of the surgeries. I'm just like, okay, it is what it is. I've gone, like I said, gone through the 2 brain surgeries and the thoracotomy, which were all very, very painful. But this was something that was a little unexpected to have this much pain for, and which caused just a lot of trauma physically, of course, and then mentally. And even to this day, like anything revolving around my feeding tube, it just gives me a lot of anxiety. And I never want to feel that pain again, because it was so bad and I just wasn't sure it was ever going to get any better. But yeah, I mean, I don't think like any of my family really bats an eye about the surgeries anymore, at least not to me, because I've gone through so many and I've had so many procedures on top of those 40 surgeries that it's normal.
The heart surgery was a lot. Our dad cried before you went back, and I broke out in shingles on half my face and in my eye because I was so stressed out. So the heart surgery was like the one that I remember really stressing me out.
That was the only one that I have ever cried before, while I was being wheeled back, just because I was so scared to have my ribs broken open and then someone working on my heart. And so that was a big one, and that was done in Chicago. So the whole family went and traveled with me, and then I had to stay there for about 3 weeks afterwards. So that definitely was a lot.
And then the feeding tube surgery, I wasn't worried about the surgery itself, but definitely what came after, not eating stuff. But yeah, otherwise everything is just
it's just
another
like
procedure.
Yeah. Yeah. Is it now? So was it hard for you guys to find providers and surgeons and people that actually work on all of this? That's got to be, because if you're doing a lot of traveling, yeah.
Yeah, and so the trigeminal neuralgia, those 2 surgeries were done in California, which were because this guy is like the top surgeon in that. And so that, of course, was a big deal for us to go there twice, and each time having to stay a month. And then, yes, and when we had to go to Chicago for the heart surgery, that was also, there's maybe 2 or 3 surgeons in the United States who actually do that type of surgery, and this is he's really the only one who does it on adults. So yeah, you don't have any choice, and I recognize the privilege that I have to be able to travel out of state and have good insurance that covers.
Yeah, that's what I was going to ask you about insurance, because a lot of places don't cover out of state unless there's a, unless there isn't a surgeon or a specialist that will deal with it that's close by.
Yeah, and I really credit that to my mom. She is like the master insurance person. She just like, she knows what plans to look for, and she knows how to get things done.
That's awesome. What was the longest surgery you had?
Like hour wise?
Yeah.
Probably the thoracotomy
Mhm.
or the brain surgeries. They were both around, I think, like 6 hours altogether.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's hard, but each time, like, my family makes a good point to be there and support me, and like Alexa's the biggest advocate. I woke up from the thoracotomy in so much pain, obviously, and the nurse said, "Oh, okay, we'll bring you some Tylenol," and I was like, "No, you just broke my ribs, like no way." And I was in the ICU. I deserved something more. And Alexa,
yeah. That takes me back to when my daughter in 2018, they broke both of her femurs and tibias, and they rotated them, put plates and screws in. And we were in Johns Hopkins, and she was doing good. And then I don't even know what time it was. It was probably like 1, 2 in the morning. She woke up. I have never heard such a scream of just, it's something I can't even explain. And she was in so much pain, and she kept saying it felt like they were sawing her leg off. I'm like, well, it's probably trauma from when she was under, I don't know. And they weren't giving her anything. She still had the epidural in. And so it took a little bit, because then the girl had to call in to get the morphine or whatever it was. I forget what it was that they were giving her to get that in. They gave her the Tylenol or whatever. I'm like, and thank God they ended up, they left the epidural in longer than the 3 days. Typically they said 3 days and they usually pull it, but they left it in 5, but due to different stuff, but because of the pain and everything, they kept it in. And then they were able to give her more morphine or whatever when she needed it. But yeah, that's, I couldn't even imagine to go through that.
yeah, it's hard. And I mean, there's also a stigma around pain meds, and I mean, there's a huge problem around pain meds, and we're definitely in an opioid crisis. But I think that does have a negative effect on those who do live with chronic pain or do need it for these very serious reasons. And so it can be really difficult to speak up and ask for more meds. And luckily I had my sister do that for me.
Yeah, that's awesome. So, here's another question for you, Jacqueline. So you've gone through a lot. Did you seek out any outside professional help to get through everything that you've been through and continue to go through, both physically, emotionally, and mentally?
Yeah, for about 5 years, I saw a really great therapist who specializes in those with chronic illnesses, which was really important for me to find, because I felt like a lot of my emotional instability rooted from these chronic illnesses, and whether that was like my social life or just health anxiety. I really wanted to find someone who had that expertise. And I don't see her anymore. I actually don't see anyone right now because I feel like I'm in a really good space also with medication. So that's great. But I really do recommend that people try to seek out professional help because I learned so much with my time with her.
And there's a stigma about that too, which hello. Yeah, you know, these stigmas, I don't like them. So, Alexa, can you share what it was like looking in from the outside, so to speak, having to watch your sister endure everything that she went through and continues to go through? And what advice would you have for other siblings out there that are in a similar situation?
Yeah, it's hard to see somebody who's in chronic pain, and but I do know that I'll never know what it's really like. I'll never know how it really feels to be in pain 24/7 or how much pain. I'm fortunate enough that, I'm not disabled and I'm healthy and I don't have to endure those obstacles in life. And I'm very grateful for that. Like I feel, and I think that that's something that actually able-bodied, non-disabled people take for granted is their health. I'm totally aware that it's ever evolving and it can change. And my current state of health is probably not forever. Eventually, something will happen, whether it's when I'm 40, when I'm 60, when I'm 80, something. It's just most, statistically bound to happen. But I feel very fortunate that right now I don't have to endure that because it is a lot. Jacqueline spends a lot of time at doctors. I don't particularly like hospitals and medical facilities. And so I don't envy that part of her health journey, but at the same time, she's, we've had to grow up really quickly because of what she's been through. And it's brought us closer. And so I'm also, silver lining, fortunate for that. And I think for other siblings, communication is key and talking about it, even if the conversations are uncomfortable. We've had conversations about mortality, and I'll, see something or watch a film. I'm a big cinephile and I do the film fest with my mom every year. And I'll see something that'll speak to me that kind of relates back to Jacqueline. And so, sometimes I'll ask her, and those conversations might be uncomfortable at first, but I think it's better than just not talking about things and not asking. Sometimes people don't want to rock the boat or offend. I'm more on the end of the spectrum where if I offend you, I'd rather say something and offend you and apologize for it later than stay quiet and think that I don't care or that I'm ignorant. And so that's kind of my advice to siblings as well. Your sibling most likely will get over whatever you say if it's offensive. That's, we're blood and we're supposed to, that happens all the time. Whether or not someone's disabled or chronically ill, it happens. And so, but I think that it's better to say something than nothing at all.
Yeah. So, Jacqueline, I also read in your blog From Shame to Change. So can you walk us through that and share with us some of the dating experiences that you've had over the years?
Yeah, dating is really hard. So after graduating college, I started to take the dating apps seriously and I signed up for all of the regular ones people have heard of. And I was quickly met with a lot of ableism, a lot of discrimination, rejection, and it led me to feel really ashamed of my chronic illnesses, and I wanted to hide them, and I wanted to hide myself because I just didn't feel worthy. And all I wished was that I wasn't chronically ill or disabled, which is never a good feeling because that is something that I can't change. And so um it just, yeah, was made me feel unlovable. So people would tell me not to have biological children because I could pass on my genetics and it would be selfish to do that. People would tell me that their families told them not to date me. So there was a lot of mixed responses, but like the moral of it was like that I was a burden and that disabled people overall are burdens. And I started to believe that, and I was like, yeah, you're right. Disabled people are a burden, and I wouldn't want to date a disabled person either. And that was something that I worked through in therapy, was that when I would express those those things that I don't want, my therapist asked the question to me, well, what do you have to offer? What do you have to offer in a relationship? And I would like rattle off a list of things. And she's like, okay, so why couldn't another disabled person have those qualities that you want? I was like, you know what? You are so right. And it really is, it's such a simple thing, but I do think that this belief is prevalent among the disability community. And it's really unfortunate because it's all internalized ableism that we're speaking to. And it really doesn't feel good to not like yourself and then to put that dislike onto other people.
Mm-hmm. What ultimately led you to create Dateability? And can each of you share in your own words what it was like during the process from the moment that you came up with the idea to the launch and what your vision is for it in the future?
Yeah, we created Dateability because of the whole feeding tube saga. And I think my biggest hesitancy about that was how was it going to change my social life? And not only in dating, but with friends, with Alexa. Alexa was worried about how it would change our relationship and like the activities we do together. And I just couldn't imagine having to explain this on top of all of the other chronic illnesses that I have to a partner who has no idea about chronic illness or disability. And so I was really, really stressed. And I reiterated to Alexa that I wish there was somewhere where I could meet someone with a chronic illness because I had looked for an app before and there was never anything legitimate. And Alexa said, well, let's just make one and you can take it from here.
Yeah. I was worried too. You know, I typically don't worry about that. And I think, oh, Jacqueline's great. She'll find somebody. And of course, I still believed that when she decided to get the feeding tube, but I did worry about the like additional obstacles it would add that she's already, on top of what she's already facing. And I'm someone who is a foodie, who loves to try new food, who loves to cook, who believes like food is art and it's expression. And so I know a lot of people feel that way, and I was worried about how it would affect our relationship. If I wanted to go eat, would she come with me and then just watch me eat? How does that work? Would I feel bad eating in front of her at home? And I wasn't really sure how that would look. And so I couldn't imagine somebody who doesn't know her, who doesn't know how wonderful she is, how they would react, because there's just so much discrimination and stigma already to begin with. And it's just added another layer. And so I just, I'm a problem solver. That's kind of how I'm wired, is I see a problem and I want to fix it for better or for worse. And so this time, I was like, you're definitely not alone in this. And so let's create a safe space for everyone who's like you, or, not like you, but who's facing similar obstacles in the dating world. Because dating's hard enough. It really is. I think dating sucks. And so I can't, having these preconceived notions about people who are disabled or chronically ill, I can't really imagine what that's like. And so it was a learning curve. I am not tech savvy at all, and I definitely have never created an app before. And so I think I probably Googled like how to find like a coder.
Yeah, you went down that rabbit hole.
Yeah.
I do the rabbit hole.
And that was a process. The first person we picked couldn't deliver after 6-9 months of working on it, and so we had to start over, and we got lucky and found people who are local to create our first version. We just transitioned to an in-house team like a week ago, so that's new. So I really can't comment on how that's going, but so far so good. But we designed the app from, put pen to paper from scratch. We designed what the logo would look like, our slogan, what each icon would look like, what each page would look like, how the app would function, and then we needed someone to bring it to life. And so we were able to do that, and the progress and what we've achieved in just over a year is awesome. We bootstrapped this whole operation. So many apps nowadays, they do get a lot of funding, but the discrimination that Jacqueline faced in the dating world, it's very similar to the discrimination that disabled entrepreneurs face in the startup world. And so we did not have the backing or support that a lot of other apps have. And despite that, I'm really happy with everything we've accomplished.
That's awesome. Dateability is not just another dating app. It's a platform with a mission. Can you share with us what that mission is, and what platforms it's available on, and what's been your response since you launched it?
Yeah, we really wanted to make Dateability an inclusive and diverse platform. And so we welcome people with all types of disabilities and chronic illnesses. And then we also welcome non-disabled people, because to be inclusive, we must invite everyone. And we also think it's really important that we do have non-disabled allies, and that those people have the chance to meet the people in our wonderful community. And in terms of diversity as well, we really wanted it to be so that you might meet someone else who is disabled, but they might not have a physical disability if you have one, or they might have another type of disability. And so we want people to remember how diverse the community is, and just how, different diagnoses manifest, and that overall, and at the end of the day, you can find something to relate to, because everyone is always made to feel different who's in the disability community. And I think we all know how that hurts so much. So it's a great way to bring the entire community together.
Yeah, I think people definitely forget the diversity of the community. They think that when they think of disability, they think about what they see in the mirror, and that's just not the case at all. The response has been great. We have a handful of success stories already, which is incredible, because I've been on the dating apps for a long time, and I have no success. So I'm like jealous. Wow, we're have been around for a year, and there's already one couple that just moved in together, and that's awesome. We have over 14,000 users. We want to expand internationally. We get so many emails on a weekly basis from parts of Europe, Australia, New Zealand, asking when we'll be available there. So that's the goal. And so the response has been great. And what makes Dateability different? We wanted the majority of users to be disabled. We wanted it to be a safe and inclusive space, but we also wanted to solve the issue of disclosure. And so, for Jacqueline, it was always a struggle. When do I disclose? How do I disclose? How much do I disclose? And what will the response be? And so we created the Dateability Deets profile section, which is an extensive list of broad terms like wheelchair user, immunocompromised, food allergy, and that goes on one's profile. It is optional. And it kind of just gives a glimpse into what the other person's situation might be like. You don't have to get into diagnoses or all the details, because I do believe that a lot of that should be earned, and it's like a trust thing. And so, but it does help kind of navigate those beginning early conversations, especially when planning a date. So if I see that somebody has chronic pain or they're a wheelchair user, I'm not going to be like, hey, let's go hike this 14er on Saturday. Right. And we can plan a date that's accessible, that is comfortable for everyone, without having conversations that might be awkward or perceived as rejection or negative, which they're not. But I could see why somebody, if you don't know somebody and I say, hey, can you do this? And I say no, I could see why, that might be uncomfortable for both parties. And so this kind of solves that problem, and also solves the problem of when to disclose. You're already disclosing at least a small part of it, and to be expected. Everyone expects that on this platform. So it's not, to be met with shame or, embarrassment.
Yeah. And I think this section really breaks that stigma. And we see it with physical disabilities and psychiatric and intellectual disabilities. Like, people are, unashamed. And it's really nice to see, because, before starting Dateability, I hardly ever talked about my chronic illnesses or disabilities. And I definitely wouldn't have put it on a dating app. And so it's really nice for people to just be who they are.
Yeah. I love that. You talked about some success stories. I can say that, that came out of it. Can you share a little bit more on those?
Yeah. So our first success story was, this couple actually met just about a month or two after we launched back in October of 2022. And they are long distance, and they live 900 miles apart. And then after dating for a year, they decided to move in together. And so that is really great. Both of these people are chronically ill, and they wholeheartedly say that if it weren't for Dateability, they just would have never met each other because they live so far apart.
No way.
And that's been great. And then another success story we have is two users who are on the autism spectrum. They matched and then found out that they actually live in the same city, and they spent the holidays together. Their families spend time together. So that's really beautiful to see. And
I love that.
yeah, and then another one of our friends that we met through Dateability, he is a golfer and he travels a lot for work. And so he was in another city and he met up with someone that he had been chatting with, and he was like, you get the same pre-date jitters that you always get, of course, but those jitters didn't include my chronic illnesses. And that is just like exactly what we hoped
Wanted.
for.
Yeah. That's awesome. I would love to interview one of those.
Yes.
You'll have to pass my information on. That would be awesome. So what advice would each of you give to those out there living with a disability when it comes to dating?
I would say be open and be kind to yourself and to the other person. I think, like Alexa said, dating is hard and it kind of sucks for everyone, but it should be fun and it can be fun. And with Dateability, that pressure is hopefully eliminated for most people.
And my advice would be similar to what I would give siblings, advice on just communication. I think it's really important. I think asking what one's accessibility needs are and also telling another person what your needs are is really important. There were so many times when Jacqueline, they would partner that she, or somebody that she met on an app would ask her to go paddle boarding or something, and she would go because she didn't want to say no. And I would say, you're crazy. Like, this is gonna destroy you for the next week. You're gonna be paying for this. Like, why don't you just tell them that you don't want to do this and you suggest something else? And I would look at her like she lost her mind. And so I think, and I think that I was right. I think that you should have spoken up and said no. And I understand, if that person's not willing to accept it, then they're not the person for you. And I know that can be a tough pill to swallow, but I think communication really is important, and being open and honest. And then also on the other end, asking questions. Yes, it might be uncomfortable. Yes, you might offend somebody. But I think that if you do it with good intention and you apologize and you recognize, or, you preface it with a not trying to offend you, I just want to ask and, have a full understanding. I think that is better than not asking at all.
Yeah, absolutely. Is there anything else that you guys would like to share before we wrap things up?
Well, you can download Dateability on Apple or Android, and it's completely free. Or you can access it from dateabilityapp.com. And so that is great for those who prefer to use a laptop or a desktop. And yeah, I mean, you got nothing to lose. We're here and we're always making improvements, and we're just extremely dedicated to making this the go-to platform for our community.
I love it. I love it. So one last thing before we wrap up is I had sent you guys a flyer about what's your word. I feel that words are very important. So I wanted to see if each of you guys can share what word you chose and why.
Yes, so I chose adapt, which kind of comes back to the beginning of this podcast. And I have learned that chronic illness and really life is unpredictable and mostly out of your control. But the only thing that you can control is your response to it. And it's been really important for me to learn how to adapt in my ever-changing body. And I think that it can be difficult to learn how to adapt, but it's the way that I've learned that, like, I will have to get through this, and it makes everything simpler and just more peaceful for me to learn the ways that I can live with my body rather than trying to change my body to go with how I want to live.
Perfect.
And my word is a Sanskrit word. It's mudita, Mudita, and it means sympathetic joy. And it took me a really long time to figure out what my place was in this world and why I was put on this earth. And I realized through my career as a public interest attorney and then with Dateability that I really only feel fully like myself when I'm helping others and helping people in need. And I have a lot of qualms about like having a savior complex, and and I'm very cognizant of that and don't want to be like that. But I do think that I was, born into privilege, and that I should use that privilege to make the world a better place. And so that's like when I really feel like I'm living up to my full potential, is when I'm helping others.
And I will say that Alexa's really good at it. She is unapologetically herself and therefore is really comfortable fighting for other people. And she'll do that for anyone, no matter if she knows them or not. She really likes to speak up about injustices that she sees. And so, yeah, I think that word describes you perfectly.
Yeah.
Awesome.
Thank you.
I love it. Well, I am so excited that you guys agreed to be on the show. I'll also have your link and any other information you want me to put in the show notes. And until next time, thanks so much.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Thank you for joining us as we spread awareness through our personal stories and the many resources shared. You can help us by joining our village simply by sharing our show with the masses. You can also become a supporter of the show by clicking on the link in the show notes. Your funds will allow us to keep sharing these valuable, heartfelt stories and resources. Be sure to subscribe to our Guilbault Girls podcast and YouTube show, and don't forget to follow us on Facebook and Instagram at Guilbault Girls.